axial skeleton. We're going to start with the skull. So in our skull, we're going to have in there multiple different bones. They're going to be frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone. Right, so let's take a look at that. So if we scroll down right here, so what bones are going to make up our skull? So we have frontal bone on top, parietal bone right here, temporal bone, occipital bone, lambdoid suture. That's this one right there. Between the occipital and parietal, lambdoid suture. Between the frontal and the parietal, coronal suture right there. Then you have another suture right here in between the parietal bone and the temporal bone. This is going to be the squamous suture. We have two temporal bones. We have two, one on the right side, the other one on the left side. And we also have two parietal bones. If we have two parietal bones, one of them is over here and the other one should be on the other side around here. So therefore, there's also a joint between the two parietal bones, which is going to be more or less around here. And that one is going to be called the sagittal suture, but we don't see it here. Now, if we look at individual bones, we have this bone right here. This is going to be in the mandible. You're having here a hole. So therefore, this is going to be the mental foramen. This part right here is going to be called the body. This is the angle. From here to here, that's the ramus. This is the mandibular notch. This is the mandibular condyle. In here, the coronoid process, this one. What is this bone? This bone is going to be the temporal bone. This hole, that's going to be the external acoustic meatus. Then we have this bump. So this is going to be a mastoid process, and that's what you can see right here. Then we have a very thin process going down like this, as you can see right there. That one is going to be the styloid process. Then you have another process that goes from this bone towards the green bone. This is going to be the zygomatic process. Another bone, this one is going to be your maxilla. This part is the alveolar process. Right here, we have a little hole. That's going to be the infraorbital foramen. We have now the green bone. This bone is going to be the zygomatic bone. Zygomatic bone is going to have this part right there. That part is going to be the temporal process. We scroll down. We have the same skull, but now we are looking at it from the bottom up. Right here, you actually have a big hole right there in the occipital bone, which is going to be the foramen magnum. On each side of the foramen magnum, you're going to have this condyle. We have two in orange. This is going to be the sphenoid bone. So if you scroll down right here, you can see again in orange the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is going to have lesser wing, and this one right here is going to be the greater wing. This part right here is going to be the sella turcica. And there's going to be quite a few holes in there, right? So therefore, you have foramen spinosum, foramen lacerum right here, and the optic canal. These are going to be for the nerves coming from your eyes. In the middle of the frontal bone, you're going to have this bone in green, the ethmoid bone. The top part of the ethmoid bone is going to be the crista galli. This part right there is going to be the crista galli. On the side, you're going to have a few holes. This is going to be the cribriform plate. If we scroll down, the ethmoid bone would be this one. What you saw before, it was just a tip, just this part right here. So this is the crista galli. On each side of the crista galli, you will find the cribriform plate. The bottom part of this bone will go actually down into what your nose is. And that's going to be this part called the perpendicular plate. So if we scroll down, you can see the sagittal suture. This is parietal bone. This is parietal bone. This is your frontal bone because this is anterior, as you can see right there. And this is the occipital bone because this is posterior. If we scroll down, you can see a better view of the ethmoid bone. Very top, that's crista galli. If we scroll down, in some of the bones that we have in our skull, we're going to have some spaces, and these spaces are going to be called sinuses. The frontal sinus, the maxillar sinus, and the sphenoid sinus. This is a fetal skull. In the case of the fetal skull, obviously you don't have sutures because the bones are not necessarily connected yet. That's why instead of having sutures, we're going to have fontanelles. This is what a lot of people call the soft spot. And we have quite a few fontanelles. A fontanelle right here in the back. Right here, we have some on the side. As we scroll down, we're going to get to the vertebral column. Each one of these bones is going to be the vertebrae. We have 7 vertebrae in our neck, so they're going to be called cervical vertebrae. We have 12 thoracic vertebrae. Those are going to be the vertebrae you have in your thorax. We have 5 lumbar vertebrae, which are going to be the back, the bottom part. Therefore, you're going to have 24 vertebrae. If you scroll down, we can look at these vertebrae. Most of the vertebrae are going to have these characteristics: spinous process, transverse process, vertebral foramen, body, superior articulating facet, and at the bottom you should have the inferior articulating facet. This is a lumbar vertebrae. If we look over here, this is thoracic vertebrae. And what do you have? Same thing that we mentioned before: body, vertebral foramen, spinous process, transverse process, superior articulating facet, and at the bottom you should have the inferior articulating facet. Or you can even see it better right here, right? Superior articulating facet right there, and inferior articulating facet right here. Now, in your thorax, you will have these other two facets right here, because in your thorax you have your ribs, right? The ribs go like this, so the ribs will articulate with that thoracic vertebrae. These ones right here are going to be cervical vertebrae. As you can see, they also have the body, they have the transverse process, you're going to have the spinous process, the vertebral foramen. So again, they have the same characteristics, except the first two. The first one is going to be the atlas, this one, and this one right here is going to be the axis. They're going to be somewhat different. So for example, the atlas doesn't have a process. I remember we said this is going to be process right there. They don't have process. So this is going to be posterior tubercle and anterior tubercle. They already have a body. So this one doesn't have a body, but it has a vertebral foramen. Also in the transverse process right here, you're going to have transverse foramen. The axis is going to start taking some of the shape that the other bones are going to have. You begin to see, for example, in the spinous process, you still have vertebral foramen, but something that is very characteristic of the axis is that you're going to have this elevation right here, this thing like a mountain. This is going to be called the dens or the odontoid process. If we look at the sacrum has holes in it. These ones are going to be the sacral foraminas. Connecting the foraminas, we're going to have some lines in here that are going to be called the transverse ridges. Below the sacrum, you're going to have another bone right here, which is going to be called the coccyx. At the very top, you're going to have the sacral promontory. This is the anterior view. The posterior view is going to be this one. You can see here you have elevation. This is going to be called the median sacral crest. You have a cavity in here called the sacral canal. And on each side, you're going to have the articular surface. This bone is going to be the sternum. The top part is going to be the manubrium. The middle is going to be the body. And the bottom part is going to be the xiphoid process. So right here you have the rib. When the ribs are connected to the sternum with its own unique cartilage, as you can see right there, then these are going to be called true ribs. When the ribs share the cartilage, like this, you see, one cartilage connects into the sternum, then these ones are going to be called false ribs. And then we're going to have other ribs that don't connect to the sternum at all. Like for example, this one right there, and this one right here, right? They don't connect to the sternum. So therefore, these ones are going to be called floating ribs. Some characteristics that we're going to find in the ribs: the head, the neck, and the tubercle. This part, that's the angle. This part is the part that is going to be connected to the vertebrae, and this one is going to be to the cartilage that eventually connects into the sternum. Next, we have this little bone called the hyoid bone. This is the only bone in our entire body that is not connected to other bones. This bone is found at the level of your neck. This part is going to be the body, this elevation, which is going to be the lesser horn, and this other elevation right here, which is going to be the greater horn.